A heavy body moves through dry grass. Each step is slow, deliberate, unhurried. At first glance, the Komodo dragon looks like a creature out of time, a living relic from a prehistoric world. Its thick scales resemble armor. Its tongue flicks through the air like a serpent's. Its jaws hide rows of serrated teeth designed not for clean kills, but for catastrophic damage. This is the largest living lizard on Earth, a predator capable of killing animals many times its size. A hunter that relies not on speed, but on inevitability. A survivor confined to a few remote islands, yet feared wherever it is known. Komodo dragons feel ancient because they are ancient. Their lineage reaches back tens of millions of years to a time when giant reptiles ruled ecosystems and mammals lived cautiously in their shadows. While most of those giants vanished, one lineage endured, isolated, patient, and lethal. But Komodo dragons were not always island-bound monsters. They did not evolve to be rare. They did not evolve to be fragile. They evolved to dominate. Their story is not about size alone. It is about biological weapons, venom, metabolism, sensory precision, and a strategy that turns a single bite into a delayed death sentence. To understand how Komodo dragons became apex predators in a mammal-dominated world, we must go back to a time before these islands existed, before sea levels rose, before isolation reshaped evolution. This is the story of how the last great reptilian hunter held its ground, while the world changed around it. To understand the Komodo dragon, we must leave the islands behind and return to ancient Australia, more than 40 million years ago. At that time, the continent was a very different place. Giant marsupials roamed the land, massive birds dominated open plains, and among the top predators were large monitor lizards, ancestors of today's Komodo dragon. These early monitors belonged to a powerful reptilian lineage known as varanids. Unlike most lizards, varanids evolved bodies built for active hunting. They had strong limbs, high aerobic capacity, and forked tongues capable of sampling chemical trails in the air, much like snakes. This was a critical advantage. While many reptiles relied on ambush and short bursts of energy, early monitor lizards could travel long distances, track prey over time, and remain active during the heat of the day. They were endurance hunters in a world dominated by large, slow-moving animals. Among them was a giant. Fossil evidence reveals Megalonia, a massive monitor lizard that may have reached over 7 meters in length. It was one of the largest terrestrial lizards to ever exist, and a direct relative of the Komodo dragon. These giants were not island specialists. They lived across vast landscapes, hunting large prey and competing with mammalian predators. Their size offered protection. Their metabolism allowed sustained activity. Their bite caused devastating injuries that prey rarely survived. But the world did not remain stable. As climates shifted and sea levels rose, parts of Australia fractured into islands. Some monitor populations became isolated. Cut off from large competitors, but also from large prey, they faced a new evolutionary challenge. On these islands, size no longer meant everything. Efficiency did. The lineage that would become the Komodo dragon began to change, not shrinking into weakness, but refining itself into something perfectly tuned for isolation, scarcity, and dominance within a smaller world. They were no longer chasing continental prey. They were adapting to rule islands. Their sensory system refined this strategy. A highly developed forked tongue samples chemical cues in the air, allowing Komodo dragons to detect wounded animals from kilometers away. They do not chase blindly. They follow the scent of death itself. Finally, they evolved extreme feeding efficiency. Komodo dragons can consume up to 80% of their body weight in a single meal. Their stomachs expand, their metabolism slows, and they can survive for weeks without eating again. In environments where food is unpredictable, this trait is survival. Each innovation answered a brutal question: how to hunt without wasting energy, how to kill without prolonged combat, how to survive scarcity without speed. Together, these traits forged an apex predator perfectly suited for isolation. And then the world tested them again. Then came the bite. Komodo dragons developed jaws lined with serrated teeth designed to tear rather than crush. A single bite opens deep wounds, causing massive blood loss. But the bite alone is not the weapon. The real innovation lies in venom. For decades, Komodo dragons were believed to rely on bacteria to kill prey. Modern research revealed the truth. Specialized venom glands produce toxins that lower blood pressure, prevent clotting, and induce shock. Even if prey escapes, its fate is sealed. Weakness follows. Collapse is inevitable. This solved a critical survival problem. Komodo dragons do not need to overpower prey immediately. They only need to land one successful bite. Energy is conserved. Risk is minimized. Time does the rest. Their sensory system refined this strategy. A highly developed forked tongue samples chemical cues in the air, allowing Komodo dragons to detect wounded animals from kilometers away. They do not chase blindly. They follow the scent of death itself. Finally, they evolved extreme feeding efficiency. Komodo dragons can consume up to 80% of their body weight in a single meal. Their stomachs expand, their metabolism slows, and they can survive for weeks without eating again. In environments where food is unpredictable, this trait is survival. Each innovation answered a brutal question: how to hunt without wasting energy, how to kill without prolonged combat, how to survive scarcity without speed. Together, these traits forged an apex predator perfectly suited for isolation. And then the world tested them again. Dominance does not guarantee survival. As the ice ages advanced and retreated, Southeast Asia underwent violent transformation. Sea levels rose and fell, repeatedly connecting and isolating islands. Forests expanded, then vanished. Large prey animals declined or disappeared altogether. For many apex predators, this was the end. But Komodo dragons endured. When rising seas cut islands apart, populations became trapped on smaller land masses. Space shrank. Resources thinned. Large-bodied hunters should have failed under these conditions. But Komodo dragons adapted through flexibility, not retreat. Their low metabolic demands allowed them to survive long periods without food. Where mammalian predators starved, Komodos waited. When prey became scarce, they shifted targets, from large herbivores to smaller animals, carrion, and even their own kind. Cannibalism was not a flaw, it was an insurance policy. Young Komodo dragons quickly learned to climb trees, escaping larger adults. This behavior reduced competition and allowed multiple generations to coexist in limited space. Survival favored caution, not speed. Then came the disappearance of the giants. As megafauna vanished across the region, Komodo dragons lost many of the large prey species they once hunted. Yet instead of shrinking into insignificance, they retained their size. Why? Because size itself had become protection. On islands with no competing predators, being large meant control. Komodo dragons monopolized kills, intimidated rivals, and defended territory through sheer presence. They became ecological anchors, too dangerous to challenge, too efficient to replace. Extinction events did not remove them, they narrowed them. The Komodo dragon's modern range is a remnant of a once much broader distribution, a survivor's footprint left behind after the world changed. What remained was not a weakened relic, but a predator refined by loss. Although the modern Komodo dragon survives in only a handful of islands today, its lineage tells a broader story of adaptive specialization under constraint. On isolated islands, evolution does not reward excess. It rewards precision. With limited space and fluctuating prey populations, Komodo dragons refined their behavior rather than their form. Instead of diversifying into many species, they diversified their roles within the ecosystem. Some individuals became active hunters. They patrolled trails and water sources, ambushing deer, pigs, and buffalo with explosive bursts of power. These dragons rely on patience and timing, waiting hours or days for a single opportunity. One successful bite is enough to justify the effort. Others function as opportunistic scavengers. Komodo dragons are drawn to the scent of decay from kilometers away. They converge on carcasses, forming temporary hierarchies where size determines access. In these moments, social tolerance replaces aggression. Fighting wastes energy. Feeding fast ensures survival. This flexibility allows Komodo dragons to exploit every available resource. Even reproduction reflects specialization. Female Komodo dragons are capable of parthenogenesis, producing offspring without mating when males are absent. In isolated populations, this trait prevents extinction. It ensures that a single female can restart a population when conditions allow. Young Komodo dragons occupy a different ecological niche entirely. Small, vulnerable, and brightly patterned, juveniles live in trees to avoid cannibalism. They feed on insects, birds, and eggs, resources ignored by adults. This vertical separation reduces competition and allows survival across life stages. Behavior, diet, and reproduction adapted to scarcity, not through expansion, but through balance. Komodo dragons did not fragment into dozens of species. Instead, they became versatile within limits, maintaining dominance by adjusting how and when they act. On islands where ecosystems are fragile, this restraint is power. Today, Komodo dragons exist at the edge of survival, not because they failed as predators, but because the world around them has changed faster than they can adapt. Humans arrived late to their story. As people settled the islands of Indonesia, landscapes transformed. Forests were cleared. Prey animals were hunted or displaced. What had once been isolated ecosystems began to feel pressure from a global force Komodo dragons had never encountered before. For a time, Komodo dragons adapted. They preyed on livestock. They scavenged near villages. Their patience and low energy demands allowed them to survive even as conditions deteriorated. But this coexistence came with consequences. Conflict followed. Komodo dragons were feared and often killed. Their bites were dangerous. Their presence near humans was intolerable. Habitat shrank. Populations became fragmented. What had once been a dominant predator was suddenly confined to protected spaces. Yet even here, their ancient traits persisted. Komodo dragons require little food. They tolerate long periods of scarcity. They do not migrate far. These traits allow them to survive in restricted reserves where other large predators would fail. Modern science has also revealed their biological importance. Their venom systems offer insight into blood pressure regulation and anticoagulants. Their cardiovascular adaptations challenge assumptions about reptile physiology. What evolved for survival now informs medicine and biology. But new threats loom. Climate change raises sea levels, shrinking islands further. Rising temperatures alter prey availability. With limited range and low genetic diversity, Komodo dragons face risks they cannot simply outweight. For the first time in their history, patience may not be enough. Their future now depends not on evolution alone, but on protection, restraint, and human decision-making. The question is no longer whether Komodo dragons can survive nature. It is whether they can survive us. Komodo dragons are survivors from a disappearing world. Their lineage stretches back to a time when reptiles ruled ecosystems and mammals lived cautiously in the margins. While most of those giants vanished, one predator endured, by refining its power rather than expanding it. Komodo dragons did not survive through speed or numbers. They survived through inevitability. A single bite, a delayed collapse, a patient hunter that wastes nothing. Their venom, metabolism, and sensory precision form a strategy built for scarcity and isolation. When the world grew smaller, they did not retreat. They adapted to rule what remained. Now, their future hangs in balance. For millions of years, Komodo dragons outlasted climate shifts, sea level rise, and the loss of prey. But they did not evolve for a planet reshaped by human hands. Their survival now depends on restraint and protection beyond natural selection. The insane evolution of Komodo dragons reminds us of a deeper truth. Evolution does not reward ambition. It rewards designs that endure. And few designs are as precise, patient, and unforgiving as the Komodo dragon. Whether this story continues is no longer a question of biology, but of choice.